I thought the house was empty. That belief was the last calm thought I had before midnight tore it apart. I remember checking every room before locking the door. Kitchen lights off. Bathroom silent. Spare room untouched for weeks. I live alone, and I am careful about that fact. Careful people survive by trusting routines. That night followed every routine perfectly, until the clock on my phone changed to 12:03 a.m. The sound came from inside the house. It wasn't loud. That was the worst part. A soft chip, like weight adjusting on a wooden floor. I froze on the couch, phone still in my hand, screen glowing against the dark. Old houses make noises, I told myself. Pipes expand. Wood settles. Lies come easily when fear needs them. Then it happened again. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Not above me. Not outside. In the hallway. My first instinct was to listen, not move. Silence returned, thick and heavy, pressing against my ears. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and uneven. The hallway light was off, but I could see its outline, a darker rectangle against darker walls. Nothing moved. Nothing appeared. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. At 12:11 a.m., the hallway light turned on. I did not touch the switch. I hadn't stood up. I hadn't even blinked. The light didn't flicker or buzz. It came on cleanly, confidently, like someone who knew the house well. My heart started pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. I whispered hello, hating myself for how weak it sounded. No answer. The light stayed on. I stood up slowly, every muscle tight, convinced that sudden movement would make whatever this was react. I took one step forward. Then another. The hallway smelled different, stale, like a room that hadn't been opened in years. Halfway there, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The spare room door was open. I never leave it open. I stopped walking. The silence felt intentional now, like it was waiting for me. My phone buzzed in my hand, making me flinch hard enough to almost drop it. One new notification. No sender name. The message read, "You checked the rooms too early." I stared at the screen, rereading the sentence until the letters blurred. My phone had no signal, yet the message timestamp matched the minute perfectly. My throat went dry as I realized something else. Whoever sent it knew my routine, my habits, my certainty. They knew I always checked the spare room first. The hallway light hummed softly now, almost pleased. Somewhere beyond the open door, something shifted again, closer this time, and the house felt suddenly aware of me. I understood then that midnight had only just begun for me. I didn't move after reading the message. My body refused, as if stepping forward would confirm something I wasn't ready to accept. The hallway light hummed steadily, casting a long shadow from the open spare room door. That shadow shouldn't have been possible. The angle was wrong, stretched too far across the floor, like it belonged to someone standing just out of sight. I checked my phone again. No signal. No Wi-Fi. The notification was still there, bright and undeniable. I typed a reply with shaking thumbs, asking who this was and how they were messaging me. The message didn't send. It just sat there, unsent, mocking me. That's when I heard breathing. It wasn't mine. It came from the hallway, slow and controlled, like someone making sure I could hear it. I backed up until my legs hit the couch. The breathing stopped immediately, as if it was reacting to me, tracking every movement. My heart raced so hard I was sure it could be heard. I forced myself to stay quiet, afraid that even the smallest sound would invite whatever this was closer. The spare room door creaked. It moved only an inch, but that was enough. The sound was deliberate, careful, like someone testing how much noise they could make without sending me running. I thought about grabbing the kitchen knife, but the kitchen was past the hallway. Past the light. Past the open door. I wasn't ready to cross that space. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Same unknown sender. You always hesitate right here. I felt a cold wave rush through me. They weren't guessing. They were observing. The message was followed by another, sent seconds later. You should have checked after midnight. That's when I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. The spare room used to belong to my uncle before he moved out suddenly. He never explained why. He only said the room felt wrong at night. I laughed at him back then. I told him houses don't feel anything. The hallway light flickered once. Just once, but it was enough to break whatever fragile logic I had left. In that brief flicker, I saw movement in the spare room. Not a full shape. Just a suggestion of one, like darkness folding around something tall and still. When the light steadied again, the room looked empty. Too empty. I swallowed hard and called the police. The call connected, but there was no voice on the other end. Just breathing. The same slow rhythm from the hallway. I pulled the phone away from my ear, staring at it in disbelief. The call timer kept running. Then a voice whispered through the speaker, low and calm. You shouldn't invite them in. The call ended on its own. The hallway light shut off immediately after, plunging the house into darkness. I stood there, shaking, realizing something terrible. Whatever was inside didn't want witnesses. It wanted time. And I had just given it more. The darkness felt heavier than before, like it had weight. I stood frozen, afraid that moving would give away where I was. The hallway light was off now, but the afterimage of it still burned in my vision. My eyes adjusted slowly, shapes returning in dull outlines. The open spare room door looked blacker than the rest of the house, like a hole cut into the night. I took one careful step backward. The floor creaked beneath my foot. From the hallway, something answered. Not footsteps this time. Fingertips brushing against the wall, slow and searching. The sound crawled along the surface, stopping whenever I stopped, starting again when I breathed too loudly. Whatever it was, it understood hesitation. It understood fear. I realized then that hiding wouldn't help. It already knew exactly where I was. My phone screen lit up again without buzzing. No notification sound. Just light. A new message appeared as if it had always been there. You feel it now, don't you? My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I typed one word. What? The reply came instantly. Not what. Who? The temperature in the room dropped, sharp enough to sting my skin. My breath fogged faintly in front of me. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock on the wall, all the normal sounds of a house trying to pretend nothing was wrong. But layered beneath it all was something else. A low, steady presence, like pressure in my ears. I forced myself to speak out loud. Get out, I said, my voice cracking. The words felt childish the moment they left my mouth. The fingertips stopped moving. For a few seconds, there was nothing. No breathing. No sound. I almost convinced myself it had worked. Then the spare room door opened wider, slowly, silently. The darkness inside shifted, rearranging itself around a shape that didn't fully exist. I couldn't see details, but I could feel its attention settle on me, heavy and intimate. My phone chimed softly. You invited me when you assumed, the message read. Empty means unclaimed. The shape took one step forward, and the floor dipped under its weight. My chest tightened painfully. I backed toward the front door, every nerve screaming. The lock was only a few feet away. Freedom was right there. But as I reached for it, the handle turned on its own. From behind me, something whispered, close enough that I felt breath against my ear. Midnight isn't over yet. The door stayed locked. The house, once familiar, felt sealed around me. And for the first time, I understood that whatever had been waiting here had no intention of leaving. I pressed my back against the front door, gripping the handle as if force alone could make it open. It didn't move. The lock was solid, unresponsive, like the door had decided it no longer served its purpose. The whisper faded, but the sense of presence didn't. It lingered inches behind me, patient, confident. I didn't turn around. My phone vibrated gently this time, almost politely. I looked down, my hand slipped with sweat. Another message waited. Running ends the game. I'm not playing, I whispered, though my voice sounded thin even to me. The reply came slower than before, deliberate. Everyone plays. A soft click echoed through the house. Then another. Lights. One by one, lamps turned on in rooms I wasn't standing in. The glow spilled under door frames, painting the hallway in pale yellow lines. It felt staged, like someone preparing a scene. My heart pounded as I realized the house was waking up in the wrong order. Footsteps sounded again, clearer now. They moved from the spare room toward the living room, unhurried. Each step carried weight, purpose. I finally forced myself to turn around. Nothing stood there. The hallway was empty, light steady, walls unchanged. For a brief, dangerous moment, relief washed over me. Then I noticed the mirror near the coat rack. My reflection stared back, pale and shaking. But behind me, reflected over my shoulder, was someone else. Tall. Still. Too close. I spun around. The hallway was empty again. My breath came fast and shallow. I squeezed my eyes shut, counting silently, trying to ground myself. When I opened them, the spare room door was fully open now. Light from inside spilled out, warm and inviting. That was wrong. The spare room had no lamp. I had removed the bulb years ago. My phone buzzed again. I made it comfortable. I felt anger rise through the fear, sudden and sharp. "Get out of my house," I said louder this time. The reply was instant. "This isn't yours after midnight." The spare room light flickered, and I heard something inside move closer to the doorway. Fabric brushed against wood. A shadow crossed the floor, stretching toward my feet. I stepped back, my heel catching on the edge of the rug, nearly sending me down. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. 12:37 a.m. Time was still moving. That thought terrified me more than anything else. Whatever this was, it existed inside time with me. It wasn't a memory. It wasn't a dream. It was here. The shadow paused at the doorway, then retreated slightly, as if reconsidering. My phone vibrated one last time. "You should have checked again," it read. "Midnight belongs to me." The spare room light went out. Every other light followed. The house plunged into darkness once more, and something unseen began walking toward me, slowly, confidently, knowing I could finally see it. I ran. Not toward the door this time, but deeper into the house, driven by the instinct that staying still meant surrender. Darkness swallowed everything except the faint glow of my phone screen. I moved by memory alone, hands brushing walls, furniture, door frames. Behind me, footsteps followed, unhurried, perfectly paced to remind me that running was pointless. I reached the kitchen and slammed the door shut, locking it with shaking hands. The small room felt tight, airless. I backed against the counter, gripping the edge until my knuckles hurt. The silence on the other side of the door stretched, thin and fragile. Then the handle turned. Slowly. Carefully. It didn't rattle or shake. It tested the lock, once, twice, as if learning how much resistance it had. I covered my mouth to stop myself from making a sound. My phone lit up again, the light far too bright in the darkness. "You always choose the kitchen," the message said. My stomach dropped. I remembered suddenly, painfully, that I did. Whenever I was scared, whenever I felt cornered, I went somewhere with tools, with exits, with things I could use to defend myself. It knew me better than I knew myself. The handle stopped moving. I waited, barely breathing. Seconds passed. Then minutes. Just as I began to hope it had lost interest, the refrigerator door creaked open behind me. I screamed. Cold air rushed out, fog rolling along the floor. Inside the fridge, the light flickered weakly, illuminating shelves that weren't empty. They were filled with objects that didn't belong there. My spare room key. My phone charger. A folded shirt I'd worn earlier that day. Things taken quietly, over time. My phone vibrated again. You leave pieces everywhere. The kitchen door opened on its own. Something stood in the doorway now. I couldn't see its face, but I could see its outline, darker than the dark around it. It filled the frame, blocking the hall completely. The air felt thick, heavy with pressure, like standing underwater. I backed toward the fridge, trapped. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely audible. It answered without speaking. Images flooded my mind. Empty rooms. Nights repeating. Me checking, locking, assuming. Each memory ended the same way. Midnight. Silence. An opening. "You called it empty," the message appeared. That made space. The thing stepped forward. The floor groaned beneath it. I closed my eyes, bracing for something final, something irreversible. Instead, the pressure eased. I opened my eyes to find the kitchen empty. The fridge door closed. The hallway dark and still. My phone buzzed one last time. "Not tonight," it read. "You're not done yet." The clock on the microwave blinked back to life. 12:59 a.m. Midnight was almost over, and somehow, that terrified me more than anything that had already happened. The microwave clock blinked steadily, its soft green numbers the only proof that time hadn't broken completely. 12:59 a.m. 1 minute left. I stood alone in the kitchen, muscles locked, afraid that even thinking too loudly would bring it back. The house was quiet now, too quiet, like it was holding its breath with me. I waited for midnight to pass. When the clock changed to 1 a.m., nothing happened. No sound. No movement. No message. Relief washed over me so fast my knees nearly gave out. I slid down against the cabinet, sitting on the cold tile floor, trying to slow my breathing. Maybe it was over. Maybe midnight really was the boundary, some invisible line it couldn't cross. I laughed softly at myself, the sound shaky and wrong in the silent kitchen. That's when my phone buzzed. "Time is flexible," the message read. The temperature dropped instantly. Goosebumps raced across my arms as the lights flickered back on throughout the house, every single one at once. The sudden brightness felt violent. I squeezed my eyes shut, overwhelmed, then opened them again. Something was different. The kitchen felt wrong, subtly rearranged. A chair sat closer to the table than I remembered. A cabinet door hung open slightly. Small changes, easy to miss, but deliberate. Proof that I hadn't imagined any of this. Footsteps echoed from the hallway again, slower now, heavier. They stopped just outside the kitchen doorway. I stared at the empty frame, heart pounding, waiting for a shape to appear. Instead, the spare room door slammed shut down the hall. The sound cracked through the house like a gunshot. I flinched hard, scrambling to my feet. The footsteps retreated, fading into silence. I didn't chase them. I didn't move at all. I just stood there, shaking, listening. Minutes passed. Nothing else happened. Eventually, exhaustion settled over me, thick and crushing. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table until morning light crept through the windows, painting the walls in soft gray. When the sun fully rose, the house looked normal again. Harmless. Empty. But I knew better now. I checked the spare room in daylight. The door was closed, just as I always left it. Inside, nothing seemed out of place. No lights. No shadows. No sign of anything unusual. If not for the messages still saved on my phone, I might have convinced myself it was all stress, all imagination. I didn't delete them. That night changed how I live. I don't say empty anymore. I don't assume silence means safety. And every night, before I sleep, I check the rooms again. Slowly. Carefully. Always after midnight. Because sometimes, what waits doesn't want the dark. It wants permission. I told myself the worst part was over, but that was a lie. I needed to function. Daylight gave the house a thin disguise, like makeup covering a bruise. I went to work, spoke to people, nodded at conversations I didn't hear. Every sound felt sharper. Every shadow seemed intentional. Midnight had passed, but it had left something behind in me. That evening, I delayed going home as long as I could. When I finally unlocked the door, I stood in the entryway for a full minute, listening. The house greeted me with silence. Normal silence. The kind that tries too hard. I checked the rooms again. Living room. Kitchen. Bathroom. Then the spare room. The door was closed, exactly where it should be. I hesitated before opening it, my hand hovering over the knob. Nothing happened when I did. The room looked the same as always. Bare. Dusty. Forgotten. Still, I didn't relax. I left the lights on that night. Every single one. I sat on the couch with my phone in my hand, watching the clock crawl closer to midnight. 11:42, 11:53. 11:59. My chest tightened as the seconds ticked away. 12 a.m. Nothing happened. I waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. No lights flickered. No messages arrived. My phone stayed silent. Against my better judgment, relief crept in. Maybe it really was done. Maybe it had only needed one night. At 12:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. "You're learning," the message said. My stomach dropped. I typed back immediately, demanding answers, demanding it leave me alone. The message didn't send. Instead, a new one appeared. "You stopped calling it empty." The hallway light turned on by itself. I stood slowly, my legs weak, eyes fixed on the glowing rectangle of light. The spare room door was still closed, but I could feel something behind it now. Not moving. Not breathing. Waiting. Another message appeared. That was the rule. The hallway light flickered once. I took a step back, shaking my head, whispering no under my breath. The door didn't open this time. It didn't need to. The presence felt closer than ever, like it was no longer bound to a single room. The message changed again. Midnight was an introduction. The hallway light turned off. I stood alone in the dark, realizing the truth settle in slowly, painfully. The house wasn't the problem anymore. The boundary wasn't the door, or the room, or even the time. It was me. Whatever had answered my assumption that first night didn't need the house to stay. It needed awareness. And I had given it that freely. Somewhere behind me, very softly, the floor creaked. And I knew midnight would never really end again. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. Midnight stopped being a moment and became a condition. Something that followed me, stretched itself across hours, waited patiently for my attention to drift. I stopped using the spare room entirely. I blocked the door with furniture, knowing it was pointless, but needing the illusion of resistance. Days passed. Then weeks. Nothing dramatic happened. No messages. No lights. No footsteps. That silence was worse than the fear. It taught me a pattern. It let me forget just enough. Until the night I visited my sister. She had moved into a new place recently and invited me over for dinner. I didn't want to go. New houses made my skin crawl now. Still, I forced myself. Normal life required normal behavior. I arrived before sunset, left before midnight. Or at least, I planned to. We talked longer than expected. Laughed. Time slipped. When I checked my phone, it was 12:06 a.m. I froze. My sister noticed immediately, asked what was wrong. I told her I needed to leave. Right now. She laughed, thinking I was joking, and pointed out that the guest room was already prepared if I wanted to stay. The word hit me like ice. Empty. She said it casually. Harmlessly. It's empty anyway, she added. No one's used it yet. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I didn't need to look to know what it said. The hallway light flickered behind her. Her smile faltered as she noticed it. That's weird, she said. The wiring's new. I grabbed her wrist harder than I meant to. Told her not to open any doors. Told her to stay with me. My voice shook, and fear crept into her eyes, confusion turning to unease. My phone buzzed again. You taught her the word. The guest room door opened slowly on its own. I pulled my sister back just as the light inside turned on. The room looked ordinary. Clean. Waiting. Too waiting. I felt that familiar pressure settle in the air, heavier than before, stronger. My phone buzzed one last time. Midnight doesn't belong to houses, it read. It belongs to whoever assumes. The light snapped off. The door slammed shut. Everything went quiet. Later, when we sat shaking on the couch, my sister whispered that she felt watched. I didn't correct her. I didn't tell her the truth. Some lessons can't be unlearned. I still check rooms. Not because it helps. But because if I ever stop, someone else might learn the word. And midnight will answer them too.